Rising gas prices, warnings of motor oil shortages, and EV enthusiasts are once again beating the drum that EVs are the way to go. But are Americans on board? Well, in today's video, we're going to dive into the numbers for the automotive market and see what is happening both on the new and used side in the electric vehicle segment. In 2026, EV sales on the new side are down over 25% year over year. And it doesn't seem like this is stopping anytime soon with the government removing the federal tax credits. That $7,500 did go a long way for EV sales over the last 5 years or so, but now in 2026, we are seeing a major reversal. Diving into an article that was dated April 10, 2026 from Cox Automotive, they go over what is happening in the new EV market. Electric vehicle sales fell by 27% year over year in Q1, according to the latest counts from Cox Automotive's Kelley Blue Book. At 216,400 units, EV sales in Q1 were lower by 7.8% compared to the previous quarter, an improvement and suggesting the sales drop after government-backed incentives were terminated has slowed. In Q4 2025, sales were down by 36% year over year and 46% quarter over quarter. So even though the numbers don't look that great, it has been stabilizing. EVs accounted for 5.8% of total new vehicle sales in Q1, unchanged from Q4 2025 and well below the peak of 10.6% in Q3 2025. The EV market in the US has clearly entered a new chapter, one being written without government support. Most automakers have already significantly reshuffled EV plans, and many have notably throttled back production, much like we just saw with Honda, where they're scrapping their full EV lineups for 2040 and they're reinvesting into their hybrid powertrains. The year-over-year sales declines by most major automakers is significant. Many saw sales down 60 to 70% or more in Q1. The declines have been expected by Cox Automotive analysts for over a year now. In a more recent article from Cox Automotive just a couple of days ago, they take a deeper dive and analyze what is happening in the EV market, both for the new and used sides. And one thing that we have here from this article is a couple of graphs, and they give us a better picture and a better understanding as to what is going on, why new EV sales might be lower than when we were last year at this time, and why taking a look at the used side might be very smart. In fact, the used market could really skyrocket in 2026, taking a look at where gas prices are right now. So here's the EV market monitor for April 2026 from May 15th. The electric vehicle market softened in April following March's rebound, with performance diverging between the new and used segments, so both markets are going in opposite directions. New EV sales declined amid broader weakness in overall vehicle demand. Now, right now in 2026, the spring buying season is coming to a close, and we are seeing demand really slow. Doesn't matter what vehicle it is, what's powering it, a lot of buyers are scaling back. Used EV sales, meanwhile, continue to expand, supported by improving inventory availability and a growing pool of off-lease vehicles. So one thing we had reported on, I think a couple of months ago, is that starting in 2026, there is going to be an influx of used EVs. So if you remember, back in 2023, right around 2024, a lot of buyers entered this market and they leased their EVs. They didn't buy them outright. And with that, they got the tax incentives, they got the tax breaks, and now they can either go and lease another EV or buy a brand new one. But for those of you looking at purchasing a used EV, now might be the time, because you're looking at right around 800,000 units over the next 3 years, and this will suppress the pricing. So there might be some great deals out there over the next few months and years. Recent Cox Automotive research indicates that while higher gas prices are driving increased interest in fuel-efficient vehicles, most shoppers continue to gravitate towards fuel-efficient gas vehicles and hybrids rather than EVs. For many consumers, the path of least resistance remains improved efficiency within familiar powertrains. Taken together, April's results point to an EV market settling into a more normalized pace, and one shaped increasingly by affordability, availability, and disciplined inventory management across segments. And here we have our first graph. This is for new and used EV sales for the month of April. On the new side, sales were down 6.2% month over month and down 23% year over year. But then you take a look at the used side, and we're going to see this on all the graphs, that there's a difference here. So for month over month, up 3%, and for year over year, up 16.7%. This is really important and this is crucial because what we're seeing on the used EV side might create a bit of urgency if you are someone who's on the fence, because those great deals that we were talking about 6 weeks ago might dry up very quickly if demand is there. EVs accounted for 5.6% of total new vehicle sales, easing slightly from March as overall new vehicle demand has softened. Tesla remained the market leader with 37,550 units sold, followed by Chevrolet, Hyundai, Ford, and Cadillac. Tesla's EVs market share edged lower to 48.8%, down from March. Ford was a notable exception though, with EV sales rising 23.9% from March, alongside gains at several smaller volume manufacturers, partially offsetting the broader market slowdown. Used EV sales reached 42,080 units in April, up 16.7% year over year and 3% month over month, pushing used EV market share to a record 2.8%. Tesla again led with 16,174 units sold through non-Tesla dealers, followed by Hyundai, Chevrolet, Ford, and BMW. And one thing I want to say here with BMW, the i4, you could buy one for around $30,000. Not so much anymore, those prices are increasing. I feel like I missed a huge opportunity there. After March's unusual strong surge, April reflected a more normalized pace of growth. Month-over-month gains were broad-based, with many brands posting increases, although declines among several higher volume makes tempered the overall advance. Now, as we take a look at this next chart, this next graph, here we have new and used EV day supply. For this one, it's not as important, but it will reflect pricing later on down the road if we do continue seeing these numbers drop month over month. So on the new side, we have 79 days of supply. Below the national average, below what you would like if you are a dealership, because you want about 90 days supply. But then on the used side, 32 days, and that's very low. So with this graph, we have down about a percentage point month over month on the new side and down 24% year over year. Then on the used EV side, this is where it gets a bit more interesting because you're looking at close to 2% month over month and then 31.8% year over year. Just like we saw with new and used sales, Cox Automotive takes a deeper dive into what is happening on the new side, on the used side, who has better inventory, who doesn't. For me, I'd like to hone in on the used EV supply and what this will do over the next, I'd say 60 days, because I would give it until July 1st, maybe the middle portion of July, before we really start seeing a major shakeup, and I think also price increases as well on the used side, and that's coming up next on the next graph. Day supply for used EVs fell to 32 days in April, down modestly month over month and 31.8% year over year. EV day supply remained below internal combustion engines for a second consecutive month. The gap underscores continued tightening in the used EV market and faster inventory turnover rate to the broader used vehicle segment. Day supply tightened broadly among higher volume brands, led by Chevrolet and Nissan. Surprising to see Nissan getting tighter inventory. Tesla, Toyota, and Rivian also remained relatively lean at around 28 to 29 day supply, reinforcing strong turnover across the used EV market. But this graph here is the one I'm really focusing on, and this is the one where I start having regrets, because I was looking at buying an EV for the channel 2 months ago, and taking a look at where the numbers are at, taking a look at the lack of availability for EVs below $30,000, I think I missed an opportunity. So when you take a look at the pricing charts here, it pretty much tells the whole story. So on the new side, the average price for a new EV is $55,211, which is about $7,000 more for a gas-powered vehicle. And that right there tells the story as to why the new side has slowed down significantly. Because those tax incentives, the federal tax credits, would have made a huge difference, would have made a huge dent right now. EVs would be flying off the lot. That $7,000 price difference is really what's holding everyone back right now who are on the fence. There might be some other hurdles such as recharge times, having an at-home charger, lack of infrastructure, but for me right now, it's the pricing that is really holding people back, that's holding this market back. On the used side though, the numbers are very tight. Because at $35,895, that's a marginal difference compared to gas-powered vehicles. And this is why we're seeing this market on fire right now. But what concerns me is looking at the price increases month over month. You're looking at 4.2% year over year. Doesn't really tell the story at 0.5%. But if we start seeing more demand in this market, that $36,000 EV could easily become $40,000 by the beginning of July. It could be $45,000 by the end of summer. And then again, you start seeing people questioning, should I go in the EV direction? Should I buy a hybrid? There's so many questions involved here. But right now, this is the time to buy an EV looking at the pricing because you can't dispute it. You know, there's a lot of value here spending an extra, $1,000 or $1,100? You're getting a vehicle that has the range. You don't have to worry about the motor oil changes and the shortages. And you also don't need to worry about gas prices either. Now, continuing on with this article, it says the average transaction price for a new EV in April was $55,211, up 1.4% month over month, but down 4.9% year over year. Incentives edged lower to an average of $7,640, representing 13.8% of ATP. The month-over-month increase primarily reflected a mix shift rather than broad-based price gains. Volume improved for several higher-priced models, while declines among lower-priced, higher volume brands such as Chevrolet and Toyota shifted the overall mix higher. But I really, again, want to focus on the used EV side because I think this is the part of the market that we really need to be focusing on because this is the market that everyone is talking about and everyone is buying into. The average listing price for a used EV was $35,895 in April, up 4.2% month over month and essentially flat year over year. It was the first positive year-over-year reading since July of 2025. The month's increase was broad-based, with 29 makes posting higher listing prices, including several higher volume brands such as Tesla up 6%, Chevrolet up 7.7%, Hyundai up 4.4%, and Ford up 3.9%. The used EV price premium over internal combustion engine vehicles widened slightly to $1,096 in April, as both segments posted similar month-over-month gains. Then, looking ahead. Following March's rebound, April's results signal a return to a more measured pace across the EV market. Near-term volatility is likely to persist for new EVs as demand responds to broader softness in the new vehicle market, evolving incentive strategies, uneven inventory positions, and continued sensitivity to fuel prices. Tightening day supply suggests oversupply pressures continue to ease. The used EV market remains comparatively well-positioned. Improving availability, expanding model year coverage, and faster inventory turnover continue to support steady growth, even as month-over-month performance varies among higher volume brands. The used EV market is expected to remain a relative bright spot through the remainder of the year. And I think that bright spot might get even brighter as we enter the summer and as gas prices continue to increase. And when you start taking a look at vehicle listings, whether it's on CarGurus, AutoTrader, you're noticing that under $30,000, there's not as many EVs anymore. And like we saw with the price increases with Tesla, with Chevrolet, you're not getting as great deals for a Tesla Model 3, a Tesla Model Y. You're not getting great deals anymore for the Chevrolet Equinox, at least on the used side. New, you can still find one below $30,000. So it seems like right now, with the EV market, it's a tale of two cities. Because on the new side, people aren't buying them. And on the used side, everyone's flocking to this because they're affordable. And I talked about this before a couple of months ago. It might be the buying opportunity of the decade. But I'm beginning to wonder if that window is beginning to close. Because when you take a look at the price charts, when you take a look at what's happening here, those used EVs are going to get a bit more expensive. So the days of seeing a Ford Mustang Mach-E GT under $30,000 might be dwindling. The days of finding a newer Chevrolet Blazer EV could be dwindling. You're not finding BMW i4s anymore. So all the good stuff is being taken. And the question remains here, will this continue for the rest of the year? And as we've been talking about over the past few days, with motor oil shortages and gas price increases, this might not stop anytime soon.